You ever feel like the world has forgotten you? Like no matter how loud your pain is, no one hears it because you've learned to suffer in silence? That's how it's always been for Althea. She was born in a quiet town nestled between mountains and fields, a place that looked peaceful on the outside, but behind its green hills and dusty streets were stories people refused to tell. Stories that only came out during drinking sessions or whispered prayers at dusk. And Althea? She didn't believe in any of it. She had no time for legends or superstitions, not when life was already cruel enough. She lived with her grandmother, Nene Lilia, in a wooden house with creaky floors and a rusted roof. Her parents were gone. No one really talked about them. Some said they died in an accident. Others claimed they left and never came back. Whatever the truth was, Althea never asked. She carried her sorrow like a secret, tucked deep where no one could touch it. Every morning, she woke before the sun, fetched water from the well, and helped her Lola sell vegetables in the town market. Her classmates teased her for her secondhand clothes and her silence. She smiled when they mocked her, but inside, she was crumbling. She didn't have dreams. She didn't believe she was allowed to. But she had one person, Mira, her only real friend. Mira was the opposite of Althea. Loud, cheerful, always curious about things people weren't supposed to talk about. Urban legends, cursed objects, ghost stories, and lately, spirit games. Do you believe in spirits? Mira once asked, grinning while poking at an old coin she found near the cemetery. What if something answers back? Althea only shrugged. But that was before the strange things started happening. It began with small things, barely noticeable. The first was a mirror, the old one in the market restroom, hanging crooked on a nail. Althea had glanced at it briefly while washing her hands. Her reflection didn't move. It stood still, unblinking while she turned away. She laughed it off. Maybe she was tired. Then there were the whispers. At night, while lying on the mat beside her Lola, she would hear them, soft, like wind passing through leaves. But there was no wind, just the sound of breathing, and something else, someone murmuring her name. She tried to ignore it. Maybe it was stress. Maybe her mind was playing tricks. That's what she told herself. That's what people always say until it's too late. But everything changed the night Mira brought the spirit board. It wasn't even a real one, just cardboard with letters and numbers written in black marker and a glass from her mother's kitchen. It's just a game, Mira said, laughing. Don't be a killjoy. They were in the old abandoned classroom near the back of the school. The place no one went to anymore. Its windows broken, walls covered in vines, and the smell of old paper still clinging to the air. They sat on the floor, the board between them. A single candle lit the room. Althea rolled her eyes, but joined anyway. Part of her wanted to believe nothing would happen. Another part, deep inside, was already afraid. Mira asked the first question, "Is anyone here?" Silence. Then, slowly, the glass began to move. At first, Althea thought Mira was pushing it. She laughed, nervous, telling her to stop messing around. But Mira swore it wasn't her. The glass moved again. Yes, something cold swept through the room. Althea felt it, like invisible fingers brushing her skin. They continued the game. Questions, answers, more movement. The air grew heavier. The candle flickered violently, casting long, strange shadows across the walls. And then the board spelled something. Yelthea, she froze. Mira looked at her, eyes wide. You didn't ask anything. Neither of them had touched the glass. The candle went out. They screamed. They ran out of that building like their lives depended on it. And maybe they did. From that night on, Althea knew something had changed. The veil between her world and whatever existed beyond had thinned. She started dreaming of people she didn't know, places she'd never been, a river of blood, a tree with hanging bodies, a song she didn't understand but couldn't stop humming when she woke up. Her Lola noticed. "Stop playing with things you don't understand," she said one morning, eyes heavy with worry. "There are rules. You broke them." Althea wanted to explain, to ask what her Lola knew, but fear stopped her. Instead, she threw the board away, burned it in secret behind the house. But even that didn't help. The whispers returned, louder this time. Sometimes she'd see someone watching her from the edge of her vision. A woman in white, a child with no face, shadows that moved even when everything else was still. And Mira? She changed. She stopped coming to school, stopped replying to messages. One day, Althea visited her house. Myra's mother answered the door, pale and shaking. "She's not well," she whispered. "She hasn't spoken in days. Just stares at the wall." Inside Myra's room, the air felt like ice. Mira sat on her bed, knees pulled to her chest, whispering the same words over and over again. "They know your name. They know your name. They know your name." Althea's blood ran cold. She left the house, heart racing, mind spinning. Whatever they had invited, it hadn't left. It was still with them, and maybe it wanted more. That night, the dreams came back, but this time they were clearer. She saw her own reflection, standing across from her, smiling with black eyes. It reached out a hand and whispered, "Let me in." She woke up screaming. Then she saw it, right there on her window pane, written in mist. Yes, the same answer from a board. The spirits had answered, and they weren't done. Now everywhere Althea goes, she feels it, watching, waiting, whispering. Even the birds outside seem quieter. The dogs don't bark at night anymore. The wind doesn't blow the same way. Her Lola has started placing salt at the door, burning herbs in every room. But Althea knows it's already too late. They opened the door, and something stepped through. But why her? What did the spirits want? And what secrets had her family been hiding all these years? As she walks home alone one gloomy afternoon, the clouds dark and heavy, the rain starting to fall, she hears it again. A voice, clear this time, right behind her. "You should have never played the game." She turns around and sees herself standing there, smiling. Then everything goes black. Althea couldn't remember how she got home that night. One moment, she was staring at a version of herself with hollow eyes. The next, she was waking up in her bed, drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around her legs. Her Lola sat at the edge, holding a bowl of salabat, murmuring a prayer under her breath. "You saw her, didn't you?" her Lola asked, voice trembling. Althea didn't answer, because how could she explain what she saw? A copy of herself, a darker version, with a smile that didn't belong to any living soul. Her Lola looked at her with tired, frightened eyes. "You need to know the truth before it's too late." That morning, while the rain poured gently outside, Nene Lilia began to speak. And with every word, the world Althea thought she knew fell apart. Her family, they weren't just poor, they were cursed. Long ago, before Althea was even born, her great-grandmother had been a Babalan, a healer and protector. Their bloodline carried a gift, something ancient and sacred. They were meant to guard a mutia, a small shell-shaped talisman passed from one generation to the next. It wasn't just an heirloom. It was a barrier, a seal, against something dark that once lived in the mountains nearby. But the curse came when one of their own betrayed their duty. "Your mother," Lola said quietly, "she tried to use the mutia for herself." According to the old stories, the mutia held more than just protective power. It could awaken spirits, open doors between worlds, and if used selfishly, invite darkness that could never be taken back. Althea's mother, desperate and angry with the life she was trapped in, had used the mutia to summon help. She wanted wealth, escape, freedom. But what answered her wasn't a spirit of light. It was something else. A swangs. Ancient ones. not the kind whispered about in bedtime stories. These were old, cruel, and patient. And when the summoning went wrong, they didn't leave empty-handed. They took your father, Lola whispered, and your mother. She disappeared months later. All that was left was the mutia, cracked and burning hot. Althea's chest tightened. All her life, she thought her parents had just left. But now she understood they didn't leave. They were taken, and now something had come back for her. Before she could ask anything more, there was a loud knock at the door. It was Mang Oren, the strange, bent old man who lived near the river. People in town called him Albulario, though some said he was half crazy. He always spoke to trees and animals like they were old friends. But this time, he wasn't smiling. "Let me in," he said. "It's not safe tonight." Lola didn't hesitate. Mang Oren entered with a satchel filled with dried herbs, stones, and strange bones. He didn't waste time. He looked at Althea, stared deep in her eyes, then nodded slowly. "They've marked her." He placed something cold in her hand. A small, pale green shell, smaller than her thumb. "The mutia. Your blood called them back," he said. "They've been waiting." Althea tried to speak, but Mang Oren raised his hand. "You need to listen now, Hija," he said softly. "The spirits you and your friend contacted were not simple souls. They were bait. The game you played, it opened something that was already cracking. The Aswangs sensed it, and now they want the mutia." She held the shell tighter. It pulsed gently in her hand, like a heartbeat. "But I didn't mean to." "It doesn't matter," he said. "Destiny doesn't wait for permission." Mang Oren placed his satchel on the floor and began drawing a strange sigil with powdered charcoal around her. Her Lola started chanting prayers she hadn't said in decades. "You are your mother's daughter," Mang Oren continued. "And like her, you have the gift. But unlike her, you must not run from it." Althea wanted to scream. She didn't ask for this. She didn't want this life. All she ever wanted was peace, just to be normal. But normal was gone now. That night, while the candles flickered and the smell of Palo Santo filled the room, Mang Oren began to teach her. He showed her how to listen, not with ears, but with her spirit, to feel the air, the ground, the trees. "The world speaks," he said, "but you must be still enough to hear." Althea resisted at first. Her hands trembled. Her thoughts wouldn't quiet. But the mutia helped. It responded to her fear, her pain, and guided her through it. By dawn, she could sense things she never noticed before. There was a whisper beneath the soil, a hum in the rain, and something watching from beyond the trees. Training became part of her daily life. By morning, she sold vegetables with her Lola. By afternoon, she walked to Mang Oren's hut by the river. There, he taught her how to make anting, how to read signs in the smoke, and how to call protective spirits through candlelight. But with every lesson came a deeper chill. The town was changing. Children woke up with scratches on their arms. Animals refused to enter certain streets. And Myra's condition worsened. She no longer spoke at all. She just drew symbols, eyes, and a tree with red roots that bled into the ground. One drawing was of Althea, and above her, the same black-eyed version of herself. Mang Oren studied the drawing in silence. Then he nodded grimly. "There's another spirit inside her now, a mirror soul, created from your fear, your blood, and the crack left by the mutia. She is you and not you." Althea didn't sleep that night. She sat by her window, holding the mutia close, staring into the trees. Then she saw it, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Low, crouching shadows that moved like smoke. And between them, a tall figure cloaked in black feathers. She blinked, and they were gone. The next morning, the town woke to news. A man had gone missing near the mountain trail. His body was found 2 days later, drained of blood, mouth twisted in terror, and hands clawing at his own chest. The elders said it was an Aswang. Mang Oren said it was a warning. They're getting closer, he whispered. They don't want to destroy you, Althea. They want to use you. She didn't know what that meant. Not yet, but she could feel it now. A weight growing heavier inside her chest. She looked at the Mutia, and for a brief moment it glowed. A faint green light, and she knew this was only the beginning. She had stepped into a world hidden in shadows, rooted in blood, and guarded by ancient names no longer spoken aloud. And somewhere in that darkness, her mother's voice was calling, begging, screaming. Althea sat under the old mango tree at the back of their house, the Mutia clutched in her hand. The sunlight filtered weakly through the clouds above, casting long, sad shadows across the yard. Her Lola was inside, asleep after another long night of prayers and protective rituals. And Mang Oren hadn't visited in days. Althea's heart was heavy, not just because of the Aswangs or the strange reflection that haunted her dreams, but because of the truth her Lola had finally admitted last night. It wasn't just her mother who broke the sacred oath. It was both her parents. Her father had been the one to suggest using the Mutia. Her mother, desperate and grieving the loss of a baby before Althea, had agreed. They didn't just summon something. They made a deal, a promise sealed with blood. And Althea, she was the child born after that deal. She had never asked to exist in this broken chain of choices. Now, she didn't know who to be angry at more, her parents, the spirits, or herself. She looked down at the Mutia. Its pale green glow had faded to a dull shimmer, as if it, too, was growing tired. The ground beneath her was still, but she could feel it now, like the heartbeat of something massive, slumbering just beneath the surface. Watching, waiting, the air shifted. A rustle in the nearby bushes made her sit upright. She scanned the trees, heart pounding. Just the wind, she whispered to herself. But deep down she knew better. She stood and walked carefully back to the house, locking the back door and checking every window. Her hands trembled slightly, but she was getting better at hiding her fear. That night, she lit a candle and placed the Mutia beside it. Her Lola snored quietly in the next room. Althea sat alone in the living room, watching the flame dance, hoping it would tell her something. Anything. Then the shadows in the corner moved. Slowly, like smoke rising against gravity. Althea stood up, grabbing the Mutia. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer, just a low hum, barely audible like the sound of bees beneath the floorboards. The shape formed, tall, thin, with long arms and crooked legs. Its face was hidden, but its presence felt wrong. It didn't belong here. Althea held out the Mutia. "You can't come in. You're not allowed." The figure paused. Then, from the darkness, a voice rasped. Neither male nor female. She broke the vow. That opened the door. Althea swallowed. "She's gone. You got what you wanted." Silence. Then, no, not yet. And just like that, the shadow vanished. Althea collapsed onto the floor, her chest heaving. The candle flickered out. That was the second time she had seen one of them up close. They weren't here to scare her. They were here to claim something. The next morning, the town was different again. Another child had fallen ill. Unexplained fever, eyes blank, always whispering to herself. Myra's drawings were getting worse. One of the teachers at school found her scribbling symbols on the floor of the abandoned classroom again. When they asked her why, she simply said, "So the gate stays open." Althea skipped school that day. She walked instead to the edge of the forest where Mang Oren's hut stood. It smelled of old smoke and crushed leaves. She knocked, then entered. He was there, sitting cross-legged on the ground, carving a strange shape into a block of wood. "I saw one of them," she said. He didn't look up. "And it saw you?" "Yes." He sighed. Then you don't have much time. Althea dropped to her knees in front of him. Why me? Why not someone else? I didn't break anything. I didn't summon them. Why does this fall on me? Mang Oren finally looked at her, his eyes full of something she didn't expect, regret. Because your blood is mixed now. Your family crossed the line. But the spirits, they also gave something in return. Not just pain. You have power. Not yet awakened, but it's there. Althea looked away. I don't want it. You don't have a choice. She stood up, frustration bubbling in her chest. Everyone keeps saying that it's fate or destiny or some curse. But where were all these protectors when I was a child? When my Lola was struggling? When I was being laughed at every day in school? No one came then. So why now? Why only when it's convenient for them? Mang Oren didn't answer. She left without another word. Later that night, she walked alone down the narrow street that led to the dried-up riverbed. The town was quiet, unusually so. Even the insects seemed to be holding their breath. As she stepped near the river, something crunched beneath her foot. A dead bird, its eyes missing. She stepped back, heart racing. Then she heard it, a sound like bones cracking in the distance. She turned. A girl stood at the edge of the river, staring straight at her. It was Mira, but something was wrong. Her neck twitched unnaturally, her fingers bent backwards like broken branches. And her smile, wide, unblinking, was not Myra's. Mira, Althea whispered. The girl tilted her head. She's not here right now. Althea stepped back slowly, her hand reaching into her pocket for the mutia. She doesn't want to see the truth, the voice said through Myra's mouth. None of you do. Leave her alone. Althea shouted. The thing inside Mira only laughed. She let us in. You held the door open. Now the old ones are hungry. Althea clutched the mutia tightly and whispered a protection chant Mang Oren had taught her. The air shifted. The riverbed trembled. Mira shrieked, a sound like glass shattering, and dropped her knees, gasping. Althea ran to her, holding her shoulders. Mira, Mira, can you hear me? Mira blinked, her body trembling. She looked around, confused, then sobbed into Althea's chest. It's in my head. I can't stop it. They're always talking. Althea held her friend as tightly as she could. That night, Althea realized something deeper than fear. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about war. A quiet war, hidden from the world. One that had started generations ago, and now she was its last unwilling soldier. The enemy wasn't just the Aswangs. It was the silence of the people, the lies passed down in broken stories, and the burden of those who chose power over protection. Althea walked Mira home. Her friend was half asleep by the time she reached her gate. But as she turned to leave, something caught her eye. A woman, standing by the tree outside Myra's house. Long hair, pale dress, and no face. Just a gaping black hole where the face should be. The woman raised her hand slowly and pointed, not at Mira, at her, then vanished. Althea didn't sleep that night. The mutia pulsed again, stronger this time. And in her dreams, a voice spoke. The blood must be repaid. The line must be ended, or claimed. She woke up with a nosebleed, her sheets soaked in sweat. There was no more denying it. She wasn't just haunted. She was chosen. But to fight the curse, she would have to become something else. Something her ancestors failed to be. And maybe, just maybe, someone her parents never had the courage to become. The wind that week never stopped howling. Althea could hear it even when the windows were shut tight, even when she pressed a pillow against her ears. It was as if the earth itself was warning them. Something was coming. She looked out the window and saw the trees moving, not with the wind, but against it, bending the wrong way, like they were being pulled by invisible hands. The ground had started to crack along the rice fields, too. Small lines at first, now turning into gaps wide enough for a child's foot to slip into. In the market, people were quieter, their eyes sunken. No one smiled anymore. Even the old women who gossiped at the bakery stopped talking. They only looked at Althea as she passed. Nervous, fearful glances like they knew she had something to do with this shift in the air. She felt it too. The mutia had grown heavy around her neck. It pulsed at night like a second heartbeat. Mang Oren said it was feeding on her fear, strengthening itself for what was ahead. But she wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Mira had changed too. She wasn't drawing as much, but she started writing. Strange poems in a language Althea didn't recognize. One night, Mira said she didn't even remember writing them. She'd wake up and the notebook would be full. And always, the same line appeared at the bottom of every page. The gate cannot stay shut forever. Althea sat in the forest with Mang Oren again that afternoon. He had drawn symbols on the dirt, each one surrounded by salt and crushed herbs. They were practicing chants now, real ones, not just for protection, but for battle. You must understand, he said quietly, the Aswangs are not just feeding. They are building something, a gate, a way in for others. Others, she asked, heart dropping. They're not the worst ones. Althea looked down at the mutia. Then why don't we stop them now? Mang all then sigh. Because it's not time yet. You'll know when it is. The mutia will burn. That's when you'll face them. Althea's chest felt tight. She wanted to be brave. She wanted to be enough. But every time she closed her eyes, she remembered her mother's voice, whispering apologies in the dark when she thought Althea was asleep. Her mother knew. She always knew something would come, and she left anyway. That night, Mira stayed over at Althea's house. They laid on the floor, staring at the ceiling, both too tired to sleep, but too scared to close their eyes. Do you think we'll survive this? Mira asked softly. I don't know, Althea answered honestly. Mira turned to her. I am scared, Fia. Me too. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Then, a loud bang. They rushed to the window and saw the neighbor's bahay, Kubo, on fire. Flames danced unnaturally, green and violet, like burning poison. People came running, but no one could get close. The fire was too hot. Someone screamed that they saw a creature slither into the shadows. That was the third house in 2 days. Each one belonged to a family that had once been part of the old rituals. The bloodlines were being erased one by one. Later, Althea and Mira walked past the burnt remains. The smell of smoke still clung to the air. In the ashes, Althea saw a piece of bone, shaped like a claw. They're not hiding anymore, she whispered. That same day, Mang Oren brought her a gift. Wrapped in cloth, it was a blade made from black stone, smooth but jagged at the edge. This was once used by your great-grandmother, he explained. When the first wave of darkness came, Althea took it carefully. It felt cold in her hand, but right? Why me? She asked again. Why does it always have to be one of us? Because someone has to carry the cost, he said. You were born after the deal. But maybe that's why you're the one who can break it. As the sun began to set, Mira brought her another notebook. The latest pages were terrifying. One drawing showed a giant figure breaking through the earth, its mouth open in a silent scream. Another showed Althea, alone, holding the mutia, standing at the edge of what looked like a cliff. Mira pointed at the writing beside it. I don't know what it says, but I feel like it's about you. Althea read it aloud, slowly. The blood-bearer shall either close the door or become its key. She looked at Mira. I think I'm both. From that night on, the town was under a strange silence. No dogs barked, no birds sang, and every night the same thing happened, dreams of drowning. Althea would wake up gasping, tasting salt in her mouth, her sheets wet with sweat that smelled faintly of the sea. One time, she swore she saw wet footprints on her floor. She didn't tell her Lola, She didn't want her to worry more. Instead, she prepared. Every night, she trained with Mang Oren, learning to use the blade, to shield herself with chants, to hold her ground even when the earth shook. Mira helped her draw protective symbols around the house, and together they kept watch. But fear still lingered. Althea sometimes looked at her reflection and didn't recognize herself. Her eyes were darker now, her hands rougher. She was becoming someone new, not the lonely girl who hid behind her hair at school. But she didn't know if this version of herself would survive. One morning, the sky turned a shade of orange that no one could explain. The sun never rose properly. It just hovered, dull and red like a bleeding wound. Mang Oren came rushing to their house. "It's begun," he said. "The gate." He nodded. "They'll try to open it tonight." Althea's stomach dropped. "Where?" "The hill behind the old church. That's where the last offering was made. The soil is still thin, still weak." Mira looked at Althea, then said firmly, "We'll stop them." But Althea didn't answer right away. She remembered something from her dream the night before. A voice had told her, "If you kill the gatekeeper, the door won't close. It will rip open." But who was the gatekeeper? Was it Mang Oren? Was it her? As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving only that sick orange glow, Althea and Mira packed their things. The blade, the mutia, salt, herbs, candles, chalk. They walked quietly through the empty streets. No one was outside. Even the crickets were silent. When they reached the hill, they saw it. A wide circle of earth, pulsing like a wound. Standing around it, figures cloaked in black, faces hidden. And at the center, a stone altar rising from the ground. On it, a shadow began to form. Althea felt the mutia heat up against her chest. It burned. The time had come. But before she could step forward, a hand grabbed her arm. She turned and saw someone she never expected. Her father. Pale, older, eyes hollow. "Don't do it," he said. "You don't know what's behind that door." She froze. "Dad." Mira stepped back in shock. "I tried to stop them," he said. "But the deal, it was deeper than I thought." Althea shook her head, trying to breathe. "You're supposed to be gone. I came back to warn you." Althea looked at the figures chanting around the circle. The wind picked up. The ground began to split. Mira clutched her hand. "What do we do, Thea?" But Althea didn't answer. She was staring at the altar, and at the thing rising from it. Something with her mother's face, but not her mother. Not anymore. The battle was about to begin. The wind screamed louder now, like 1,000 voices calling out in pain and anger. Althea stood frozen, her heart pounding so loudly it nearly drowned out the chanting circling the gate. The altar in front of her glowed with a sick green light, and the creature that wore her mother's face was slowly lifting its head, eyes still closed, as if waking from a long, cursed slumber. But it was her father's voice that made everything blur. "I came back to stop you," he said again, voice shaking. "You don't know what's about to be unleashed." Althea couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her mother, dead for years. Her father, gone even longer. And now both of them stood before her, twisted into something she didn't understand. "Why now?" she asked, voice hollow. "Why tell me this now?" Her father stepped forward, reaching for her, but the mutia around her neck pulsed violently, warning her. She stepped back instinctively. "You're not who I remember," she whispered. That's when Mira pulled her aside, whispering sharply, "Thea, something's wrong. I don't think he's really your father." Althea looked again. His shadow too long. His eyes, not the soft brown she remembered, but pure black like bottomless wells. It wasn't him. And just as that truth sank in, the creature wearing her mother's face opened its eyes. No pupils, only white, empty and endless. The figures around the gate began to sway faster, chanting louder. The earth cracked further beneath their feet, and Althea felt something rising, not just in front of her, but from within. A memory she'd buried deep. She was 6 years old. It was the night before her mother disappeared. She had woken up to whispers, low, urgent voices behind the door. Her mother, and someone else. The curse must stay sealed, her mother had said. She cannot know. But what if it chooses her? The other voice replied. Then may God forgive us. The memory ended, and Althea gasped, her knees weak. It had always been her. The curse wasn't just a burden passed down. It was alive. It had chosen her. And now it was waking. Mang Oren suddenly appeared from the shadows, holding a staff made of bone and wood, his eyes wide with panic. Althea, listen to me, he shouted. That thing is not your mother. It's the vessel for the gate itself. If it takes full form, it will open a path for all the darkness beyond. Althea turned to him, her voice trembling. What do I do? He threw her a pouch. Break the circle. Scatter the salt on the north and east corners. Disrupt the chant before it's too late. Mira moved with her, sprinting toward the edge of the circle, but just before they could reach it, one of the cloaked figures blocked their path. It removed its hood, and it was Elena, a girl from their school. Quiet, kind, someone who once shared her lunch with Mira during a stormy day. Elena. Mira gasped. What are you doing? But Elena's face was blank, her eyes glazed over. The vessel must rise, she said, voice flat and hollow. The key must bleed. She raised a twisted blade made of glass and bone. Mira screamed, and Althea reacted without thinking. She raised the black blade Mang Oren gave her, and with a desperate cry, parried the attack. The impact sent a sharp ringing through her body. She could feel the mutia burning now. It wasn't just heat, it was pain. Her chest felt like fire. More cloaked figures began to turn. More of them were people she knew. Classmates, neighbors, the same people who looked at her strangely the past few weeks. They were all part of it, and now they were trying to stop her. Why us? Mira cried. Why is this happening to us? I don't know, Althea whispered, but I'm done running. She pushed forward, blades slicing through the chanting circle. As she scattered the salt, the ground shook, and some of the cloaked figures fell to their knees, crying out in strange, inhuman voices. For a moment, it seemed like they were winning. But then the sky cracked. Not thunder. A literal crack, like glass splitting apart. And from it spilled a dark mist, swirling and alive, crawling down like fingers reaching for the land. Mang Oren dropped his staff in horror. No, it's too late. The gate has begun to open. The creature on the altar let out a scream. Not human. Not even animal. It was something ancient. And that sound made the trees wilt, the rocks split, and Althea's ears bleed. Her legs gave out. Mira pulled her up, crying. We have to run, Mira said, but Althea shook her head. If we run now, there won't be anywhere left to go. Suddenly, her vision blurred, and she was somewhere else. A vision. She was standing in a different forest. The trees were dead, and the sky was black. In the distance stood a woman in white, her back to Althea. The woman turned. It was her mother, but this time she looked real. Soft. Sad. You have to stop them, Anik, she said, tears falling. I made a mistake. I tried to protect you by keeping you blind, but now the blind must see. Althea stepped forward, sobbing. I don't know how. Her mother raised a hand and pointed at the mutia. You have what you need, but you must let go of your fear, or it will consume you. The vision faded. She was back in the forest. The chanting had returned. The sky was now almost fully torn, but something inside Althea had shifted. The mutia stopped burning. It was glowing. Soft, silver light poured from it, and for the first time, she felt peace. Not safety, but peace. Like the truth was finally hers. She turned to Mang Oren. If I step into that circle, what will happen? He looked at her with pain in his eyes. You might not come back. She nodded. Then I'll just have to go forward. Mira grabbed her hand. I'm with you. No, Althea said gently. You need to live. If I fail, someone has to remember the story. Someone has to warn the others. Mira shook her head, tears spilling. Don't make me leave you. I love you, Mira, Althea whispered. You're my only family now. That's why I have to do this. Before Mira could argue, Mang Oren pulled her back, whispering protective chants around her to keep her safe. Althea stepped into the circle. The ground recognized her. The altar pulsed brighter. The creature's head turned toward her, and for a moment, it smiled. You are the key, it whispered in a voice that was not hers. You are the final lock. And then the earth opened beneath her feet. She fell into blackness, into silence, into fate. There was no light where Althea landed, only silence and shadows that breathed. For a heartbeat, she thought she was dead. But then the mutia around her neck shimmered faintly, casting silver light through the darkness. Slowly, the world around her came into view. Twisted trees without leaves, floating stones in the air, and a sky with no stars. This wasn't the forest anymore. She had entered the realm beyond the gate. Her footsteps echoed as she walked on ground that wasn't quite real. With every step, memories whispered in her ears. Her mother's lullaby, Myra's laughter, the betrayal of the town, the silence of her father's absence. The air grew heavier, and then, at the center of this forsaken space, she saw it. A throne of bones, roots, and black fire. Sitting on it was the true enemy. Not the creature wearing her mother's face. Not the shadows pretending to be her father. This was older, darker. A being formed from curses passed down, hatred fed by blood, and the silence of generations that chose to forget instead of fight. Its eyes were like deep wells of grief and rage, and when it stood, its body shifted, sometimes human, sometimes beast, sometimes nothing at all. You are the chosen wound, it said in a voice that sounded like a storm buried in the sea. Born from fear, shaped by pain, ready to be filled with me. Althea gripped the mutia tightly. I didn't choose this. No, it answered, but your blood did. And now, you carry the final piece of the curse. You are the lock, the key, and the price. A wave of dark energy rushed toward her, and she barely raised the blade in time. The force threw her back, crashing into a tree that moaned as if alive. Blood filled her mouth. Her arms shook. She couldn't win. She knew that, but still she stood. The creature circled her slowly. Your mother begged me to spare you. She offered her soul. Your father, he traded his memories, tried to forget your face. But blood remembers, and now you stand alone like they did. No, Althea whispered. I'm not alone. The mutia glowed brighter, and beside her, a second light appeared. Mira, or at least something that looked like her. A memory? A spirit? Althea didn't know, but it smiled, and that smile gave her strength. Your name is your power, the voice said. Not Myra's. Older, softer, familiar. Her mother, not the monster, the real one. Althea's knees buckled, tears falling freely. I am scared. I know, Anik, the voice said gently. But you're not just fear. You're the fire that remains. The hope we lost. Finish it. The creature roared and struck again, this time with claws made of screams and black mist. Althea spun and slashed with the blade, meeting the shadow with light. The impact lit the darkness like lightning. The two forces collided, cursed darkness and ancestral light. And then she saw it. In the creature's chest, a crack, a scar, the original wound, the first curse. She ran toward it. The shadows tried to pull her back, images of her mother dying, her father leaving, Mira crying her childhood of rejection and pain. But she pushed through, screaming with all the rage, sorrow, and strength inside her. She drove the blade into the crack. The creature froze, then screamed, not in anger but agony. The throne behind it crumbled, and black fire erupted from the wound, flooding the realm with light. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the ground shattered. The sky split open. Althea was falling again. But this time, she didn't feel fear. She awoke on the forest floor. It was still night, but the chanting had stopped. The altar was broken, the figures gone. Mang Oren was kneeling beside her, his face filled with relief and awe. "You did it," he whispered. Althea sat up slowly, wincing. "Is it over?" Mang Oren looked at the sky. "For now." Mira ran to her, hugging her tight. "I thought you were gone." "I thought I was too," Althea whispered. "But something pulled me back." She touched the mutia. It was cracked, the power inside it, fading. "It gave everything," Mang Oren said. "The mutia protected you as long as it could. But the curse is not fully broken." "What do you mean?" Mang Oren pointed to the edge of the forest. "Look." The trees were withered, the soil blackened. The darkness may have been driven away, but its mark remained. "That gate was one of many," he said. "What you destroyed was the heart of it, but others will try to awaken the rest." Althea stared at the forest, her chest heavy. "Then I have to stop them," she said. Mira grabbed her hand. "Not alone. Mang Ozen not that. You'll need guidance, training. The spirit world won't forget what you've done. It will remember." Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through them, cold and sharp. And in that wind, a whisper. "The key lives. The door watches." They turned, but no one was there. Althea looked at the cracked mutia. It shimmered weakly. The battle was over. But the war was just beginning. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the trees, eyes were already watching. Waiting. Althea stood at the edge of the forest for a long time. The trees had changed. What was once thick with darkness now stood in silence, almost in mourning. Some leaves had returned, but most branches were still bare. The ground held a strange stillness, like it was waiting for her next move. It had been 3 weeks since the confrontation inside the other realm, since she stabbed the blade into the heart of the curse. And though the town hadn't seen what she saw, everyone felt something shift that night. The air was clearer. The sickness in the soil had lessened. The nightmares that haunted children stopped. But nothing had returned to normal, because Althea had changed. She no longer woke up crying in the middle of the night. But sometimes she woke up staring at the ceiling, feeling a presence she couldn't explain. Like someone was still watching. Maybe the curse didn't die. Maybe it just remembered. Mira had stayed by her side through it all. The village elders, once cold and distant, began showing small gestures of kindness. Warm rice delivered to their doorstep, or silent nods from across the market. No one spoke about the night of the ritual, but they all knew. They knew who saved them. Still, the cost was never discussed. Althea hadn't told anyone about what the creature said, that her mother gave her soul, that her father chose to forget her, that she was the final price. That pain stayed in her heart like a stone. One afternoon, while helping Mira sweep dried leaves from their small porch, Althea looked up and whispered, "Do you ever think I wasn't meant to survive?" Mira stopped sweeping. "No, I think you were meant to end it." Althea didn't respond. She just stared at the horizon, where the forest met the sky, where the door had once opened, where the enemy had spoken her name like it was a curse. The next morning, Mang Oren arrived with something wrapped in cloth. "The spirits left this," he said. "I found it at the altar ruins. It's not ordinary." Inside the cloth was a small kabibi, shining, smooth, and warm to the touch. "A memory holder," Mang Oren explained. "Not a mutia, but similar." It keeps the last truth of a soul. Althea held it close, and the moment her fingers closed around it, her mother's voice whispered in her ear. Not words, just a lullaby. The same one she used to hum when Althea cried at night. Her throat tightened. Mira placed a hand on her shoulder. I never knew she was protecting me all that time, Althea said softly. I thought she just left. She didn't, Mang Oren replied. She gave everything. And now so had Althea. Over the next few days, she walked around the village more, helped repair roofs, sat with the old women who used to avoid her. One even gave her a small woven bracelet and said, "You're not the cursed one anymore. You're the girl who fought the dark." But deep inside, Althea knew her story was still unfinished. The gate was destroyed, but other gates might still exist. Other families with their own curses. Other towns where children were still being taken in silence. One night, while sitting by the fire, she turned to Mira. "I want to learn more," she said, "about spirits, curses, magic that heals, not just fights." Mira looked surprised, then smiled. "You mean like Mang Oren?" Althea nodded. "Maybe even better." The next morning, they both approached Mang Oren's hut. "I'm ready," Althea told him. "Teach me." He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "You've already survived what most albularios never face in a lifetime," he said. "But power without wisdom is just another kind of curse. Are you ready to carry it with care?" Althea didn't hesitate. Yes. The training was hard. Some days, she felt like giving up. But the Kabibi gave her strength, and Myra's laughter brought back life to the darkest hours. She learned how to see what was invisible, to hear the whispers of trees, to feel when a spirit crossed a line it shouldn't. And through it all, she began healing, not just the land but herself. One day, while collecting herbs at the riverbank, she found an old necklace buried in the mud. It was her father's, a small trinket he used to wear when she was little. The memory came rushing back, him carrying her on his shoulders, singing off-key, making her laugh. He had left. That pain would never vanish. But now she understood. He tried to protect her the only way he knew, by forgetting. She held the necklace to her chest and whispered, "I forgive you." Then let the river take it. Another month passed. The forest began to bloom again. Children ran freely. The sky no longer felt heavy. One night, during the town's harvest celebration, fireworks lit up the sky, and Althea stood at the hilltop alone, watching. She wore a white dress, simple but clean. A flower crown sat on her head, placed there by Mira. "You look like Hope," Mira had teased earlier. But now, standing under the stars, Althea didn't feel like Hope. She was Hope, for those who had lost their voices, for the forgotten, for the broken. As the final firework burst into golden petals across the dark sky, a cool wind blew past her. In the breeze, she heard it again, her mother's lullaby, faint but strong. She smiled, then turned back to the village, where new stories were waiting to begin. And though the darkness might one day return, so would she, with light in her hands and courage in her name. The end.